Have I been mute this whole time? How about that? There you go. I think I've been mute this whole time. Artisanal podcasting. But welcome to the Schnitzel Boys live stream here on Monday night, Schnitzel night. We don't have all the fancy fanfare. I'm trying something new. I'm actually streaming straight to YouTube. For our listeners at home, we are a YouTube live show. You can watch us live, and then we got a chat. You can talk to us. You can talk to us in the chat there. And I think I had one viewer, and then he went away. That's what it's like. But hello, everybody. I'm going solo tonight. My co-host Bjorn Schnitzel is in Europe. Color is in Europe. Sorry, my mom texted me about foosball, which reminds me there is a foosball game on right now. I'm streaming live at the same time. Manchester City versus Al Hilal is happening in the Club World Cup. So I'll keep it real quick. Just some solo topics. And I'm here for the live chat because I want to provide content for my community and my listeners. And I don't want to leave you hanging. I'm going solo tonight. Might have a guest next week. Might go solo again next week. And then following that, Bjorn will be back. We have the Club World Cup happening right now. Manchester City versus Al Hilal. I'll be streaming that a bit. Earlier today, we had Inter Milan versus Fluminense. And then we had USA versus Costa Rica yesterday. But we have the MLS clubs. We have Inter Miami versus PSG. We have the German. I got my Bayern shirt on today, the one that makes me look like I'm a staff member there. I'd love to be a staff member there, but I'm really not. Just a fan. Bayern Munich was able to handle Flamengo 4-2 in Miami. And then tomorrow we have Borussia Dortmund versus Monterrey. Monterrey, the last CONCACAF team left in the tournament. I, of course, will be rooting for my BVB boys, the German teams, to get through to the quarterfinals. We have Club World Cup. We got Gold Cup. I went to LAFC game last night, LAFC versus Vancouver. We have some transfer news. We've got some Germany stuff. I'm just going to touch on some topics moving forward. If you're here with me in the chat with me. If you're not, enjoy this. If you're listening to it in the podcast form, I'll try to keep it succinct, and I'll try to move forward. I'll do topic by topic. So I'll start with the Club World Cup. FIFA Club World Cup, still a lot of fun. We're in the round of 16 mode. And today, as I record this, earlier today, we had our first upset as Fluminense, a traditional club from Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, was able to upset a 2-0 victory over Inter Milan. They scored a goal, I want to say a minute and a half into the game, and scored a second goal in stoppage time to win 2-0. They did the catenaccio to the Italians. They scored a goal, held the goal the entire time, did a little dark arts. There was a fight between the Fluminense coach and the Inter Milan players. It was hot. It was in North Carolina, Charlotte, where the Carolina Panthers play. But Inter Milan was eliminated from the round of 16 by Brazilian club Fluminense. So now Fluminense joins Palmeiras as two Brazilian clubs that made their way to the quarterfinals. Good for them because, as has been discussed, one of the big stories of this tournament is how much this means for the Brazilian clubs. And I brought this up last time, but I was young. Stefan Schnitzel was in Brazil when the FIFA Club World Cup was in Brazil in the year 2001. Or no, year 2000, January 2000. Only 8 clubs, but Vasco da Gama and Corinthians knocked out a prime Real Madrid and Manchester United that summer, or that winter. Summer for Brazil, but winter in the Northern Hemisphere, January. And it was a big, big, big deal for them. Competing against Europe's elite is always a big deal for the Brazilians because the Brazilians have pride. They won 5 World Cups. They have clubs. The Brazilian soccer sphere is a very proud soccer sphere, and it is excluded from the European milieu. Especially now, their best players all go to Europe during their prime, and sometimes they come back for a bit. They go back and forth and yada yada. But for the Brazilian clubs, they have a plethora of young next man up youngsters. Some good neighbors from Uruguay, Colombia, Argentina that they bring in as well. And also people who have done their time in Europe for whatever reason. Now they're coming back to finish up in Brazil, or it didn't work out for them. So they're getting back on their feet in Brazil before maybe they go back to Europe, that kind of stuff. And a club like Fluminense is a proud club with a very competent roster. Does it match the roster salaries of a Real Madrid or a Bayern München? No. No, it's kind of in between. Does it match the roster salaries of an MLS club? No, it smashes that too. It kind of like lives right there in between. It's where it splits the difference between a big European club and our small American clubs, with our $5 million a year salary caps and yada yada. That's a team cap, not per player. It's team cap. Casey Keller was talking on ESPN FC, he mentioned with a reporter from Spain that Jan Oblak's salary alone dwarfs the entire salary of the Seattle Sounders, for the Atletico Madrid versus Seattle Sounders game. So Inter Milan was eliminated. Inter Miami was eliminated in the round of 16 as well. It wasn't as tight of a game for them. They were quashed quite heavily by PSG, scoring most of the goals 5 minutes before the half. I think it was 1-0, and then it was 4-0 between the 40th minute and the 45th minute. And in the second half, PSG just turned off a bit and then let Inter Miami come at them a little bit. But it was just a clear difference in quality. Like PSG showed up. They're the champions of Europe. And much to the chagrin of the South Americans, considered the champions of the world because they are UEFA Champions League champions. And they won. They beat Inter Milan heavily in that final. And they beat Inter Miami heavily in this round of 16. So Inter Miami and Inter Milan share a bet of sorts of being handily defeated by PSG, of being eliminated in the round of 16. And if you're Inter Miami, that is quite the achievement you can hang your hat on. Good for them. That's little baby Miami versus mighty Inter Milan, 100-year-old Italian club. Italy's best club right now, probably. So we have the one American club remaining. They were eliminated, but overall, I think the American clubs can be proud. LAFC, I went to last night. They lost to Vancouver in a very tightly organized, efficient Vancouver. Vancouver playing without your Sebastian Berhalter and Brian White. But they still pulled off. And it was Olivier Giroud's last game. He's leaving LAFC and going back to France. He spent a year here. It was not fruitful. Now he's going to go back to Lille in France. So we gave him a sending off last night and clapped him off the field. And I wish him all the best. He didn't have much to offer for LAFC. Is Thomas Muller going to replace Olivier Giroud at LAFC? Thomas Muller was asked point blank if he's going to MLS. He said maybe. So when the tournament's over, he's got to work things out, a.k.a. talk to the missus and stuff. So is he mentally already prepared to come here, already made his decision? Possibly, probably. He just hasn't. Nothing's official yet. So who knows? Who knows? But Bayern München did beat Flamengo. They march on. Bayern versus PSG, a mouth-watering quarterfinal. PSG are favorites. This is probably the first game of the tournament that Bayern will enter not as favorites. So they have a challenge ahead of them. Leroy Sané played his final game for Bayern in the round of 16, I believe. I believe the agreement, which is so funny, is although he signed with Galatasaray in Istanbul, he had a commitment to play for Bayern at the summer tournament here, the Club World Cup. So he came back and he played his heart out. He did well. But I guess the round of 16 was agreed upon to be his last game because he did his farewell, and now he's flown to Istanbul. He's left his team behind. So it's odd to me for a player to leave in the middle of the tournament. But so be it. And if I'm misunderstanding things, maybe it's false. But I believe after the round of 16, his commitment was done. So away he goes. Bayern München still looks for a winger in the transfer market. But I think the bigger news out of Germany is that Bayern München signed or is about to sign Nick Woltemade. The youngster, he played for Germany during the Nations League and didn't impress, honestly. But he's a youngster from Stuttgart, and he then played for the German U21s. And the German U21s made a run to the final. They lost against the England U21s, coached by Lee Carsley. Good for England. They have a young crop of guys coming up. But the German young crop is also very good. They made a good run to the finals, Woltemade being kind of the star of that team. And it's looking like Woltemade is the next up-and-comer. Germany's Patrick Hagiman, if you will. Which I won't. Um, I think Voltemata is the up and comer. He is being touted as sort of Harry Kane's long-term replacement at Bayern München. We've had a lot of stories of youngsters being put pressure like this on their shoulders. We'll see how he handles it. We'll see how it develops. But Voltemata is the song of the summer for the German youth transfer market. So good for Voltemata, good for Bayern. Hopefully he comes in as a formidable, kind of like a Choupo-Moting replacement, really. He's going to be on the bench, but perhaps being touted as coming off the bench and trying to challenge Harry Kane for a spot. Harry Kane scoring a brace against Flamengo. But there you go. So Bayern off the quarters. Inter Miami made out of the group and unfortunately stopped by the PSG train. Inter Milan lost today. The Fluminense upset. Good for that's two Brazilians in the quarterfinals now. And then we have Borussia Dortmund versus Monterrey tomorrow. Monterrey, the last remaining CONCACAF team. I do root for my CONCACAF, but tomorrow I'm going to Dortmund. Would love for the German teams to go far. What if the two German teams got eliminated at the same time the two Brazilian teams got eliminated? Very realistic. In fact, what if Monterrey loses? Like, what if Monterrey beats Dortmund tomorrow and then Bayern lose to PSG, which is very realistic, and then the Brazilian clubs did better than the German clubs? Another thing the Brazilian clubs can hang their hat on. And that means that there'll probably be an aggressive transfer campaign to storm those clubs. But there we go. With Inter Milan, are they happy to go home? There's sort of that cloud with the European clubs. Do they really want to win it? Are they in it to win it? Are they worried about load management? All these snooty reports and coming from the European outlets, they're the only ones talking about that crap. Pep Guardiola being like, other clubs are jealous of us. Ask me again about load management in December. It's just the Europeans are so negative. They wanted to attack this tournament from the get-go. They're attacking it during the tournament. And it's like, guys, they're having a good time. They're playing their hearts out. It's a fun tournament. Just let the soccer win. Let soccer win. Normally around this time, there'd be a Confederations Cup or something. Players always play during the summer before World Cup. Nothing about this is new. So I don't really get where a lot of the complaints are coming from. Last summer, Copa. Used to be Confed Cup. And what about the Gold Cup players? The players are competing competitive games throughout the summer, every summer. It's not, stop being so Eurocentric. It's just this. That's kind of what the FIFA Club World Cup is about, is to challenge the Euro snobbery and the Eurocentric view on world football. And the Brazilians showed up to do that. They're always ready to show up to do that at the regular World Cup and now at the Club World Cup. So I think this tournament does have a role to play. I think it's definitely big for the non-European teams. And for the European teams, they need to man up and they need to realize that they're here also to compete, not be embarrassed, like your Portos or your Inter Milans. It's embarrassing. If you have 5 times the salary, 5 times the wage bill, show it. If I'm an Inter Milan fan, I'm wondering why my team can't handle a club that has 1/5 the wage bill, But that's just me. So the FIFA Club World Cup marches on. Bayern are through. Inter Miami out. Dortmund tomorrow. Will this create changes, right? MLS has all these big questions. All the big players say, oh, MLS financial limits, blah, blah, blah. Yes, MLS has severe financial limits. Other countries like Germany have financial rules as well. Nobody's ruleless. MLS is much more stringent, of course. I support loosening the purse strings, but it's not up to us. As I mentioned last week, MLS is designed by former NFL execs where they don't understand that there's a greater sport at play here. And, River Plate and Boca and Fluminense and Flamengo and Palmeiras, these are the all-star teams of their leagues. The best talent floats up to those big clubs. And when they export the product, they're exporting their main brand. MLS isn't like that. MLS is a league of 30 teams, and it's a crapshoot. Some years, one team's good, another team's bad. We don't have marquee clubs. We have clubs that do well and clubs that do poorly, of course. It's not exactly even, but we just don't have a marquee club system. And our financial limitations means every club has to be on even footing financially. And that's very unique in MLS. That's an MLS special. And because of that, it makes our league very competitive internally, but very non-competitive externally. And we have to make a decision whether we want to sacrifice the internal competition for the external competition. I, for one, am perfectly fine with that choice, but I don't think the owners and the execs are. And you have to ask the fans at large, would they sacrifice the ability to win an MLS Cup every year if a couple MLS clubs would then go off and do better at your CONCACAF Champions Cups and your FIFA Club World Cups? Should we turn LAFC and LA Galaxy and Atlanta United and maybe Seattle Sounders into like an MLS All-Star team year in, year out to go really compete the FIFA Club World Cup? Maybe that's in our future. Who knows? I, for one, would be perfectly fine with it. I still believe the strength is in our academies. I love watching this New York Red Bull Academy alumni just be a big deal. Tim Ream has been playing great for the U.S. Brian White, he's coming out, former Red Bull. I was at LAFC last night, saw Aaron Long just boss the field. I'm like, New York Red Bull or Aaron Long, create players. Clubs need to be creating players. And I think that is much more important than any other topic right now. So yeah, it's a FIFA Club World Cup, a little MLS. New York Red Bulls had a home tie. NYCFC lost to Montreal. So very meh. Not Alonso. NYCFC is without Matty Freeze and Alonso Martinez, who are stars of the Gold Cup, especially the USA Costa Rica game. Bjorn did text me about that. Matty Freeze had a great game for the U.S. He matched the great Keylor Navas. Keylor Navas of Costa Rica, possibly the greatest CONCACAF player of all time, who played for Real Madrid and PSG from little Costa Rica, Pura Vida, and did very well. And he's a great goalkeeper. I mean, he really showed up last night. He's just a top-class goalkeeper. And Matty Freeze, young Matty Freeze, from NYCFC, showed up. He blocked 3 penalties in a penalty shootout, and he matched Keylor Navas. Good for Matty Freeze, man. People are talking about Matty Freeze being our goalkeeper of the World Cup next summer. I don't know about that, but it's definitely proving to be a depth piece. He had that blunder in the first game, but with goalkeepers, you need to give them some faith. You need to give them some time. You need to give them a shot. Let them learn their feet. Is that the right phrase? But let them come out of their shell. And we have this USA B team playing with pride, fighting for each other, and I love to see that. And I did see a lot of that at the Costa Rica game, and that's a good thing. I've talked about this ad nauseum. The roster's a little odd. Yeah, we've got some stars missing, and how are they going to integrate moving forward over the next year? We need to keep an eye on that. But as of right now, the U.S. is having a good old school Gold Cup tournament. They're in the semis against Guatemala. Guatemala upset Canada in penalties. Mr. America, Jesse Marsh, has a little egg on his face. And I love Jesse Marsh, another former Red Bull, crushing it out in the world, the soccer world. And, he did a dig at the U.S. He's like, all Canadian players want to be here, and That was a dig at us. And then last night, he said, half of my squad is missing. And we're like, well, which is it, Jesse? But poor him, a little egg on his face. Guys like Rubio Rubin and the like for Guatemala pushed Canada to penalties, just like Costa Rica and USA. But Guatemala won the penalties. And Canada's eliminated. And that's got to be embarrassing for them. They were definitely expected to meet the U.S. in the semis. But now USA is Guatemala in the semis. We should win that. That's expected. Mexico's expected to win Honduras. And the USA-Mexico final that we've all set up for should happen. That didn't happen last time. I was there when Panama beat us in the semis. Let's hope there isn't a repeat of Guatemala beating us in the semis. So we're on run to beat Mexico. And Mexico is definitely the favorites. I'm not feeling good about the game against Mexico. I'm feeling much better about the game against Guatemala. And that leads to sort of USA talk, Talk with the United States, it's always next level. How do we get to that next level? We now spend a lot of money on a fancy big coach, which I approve of. I thought that was a good move because we should see what that looks like. We have no real precedence on the matter. So let's get some precedence. Let's see what that looks like. And it's been very mixed, Nations League has been bad. There's this behind the scenes disciplinary war going on between, I think, the established players and the new management, So I do root for Poch. I hope he settles that. I hope disciplinary things shine through, and I hope the players say yes sir and no sir, and just you know, my fundamental belief is an athlete's there to listen to the coach, and the coach is in charge. So I'm hoping that's what's happening with our U.S. men's national team. And right now, the U.S. men's national team is just as good as it's ever been. And I don't mean like amazing. I just mean they're as good as they've been. There's no next level happening. There's no down level happening. We have that. We had a very disappointing Copa, and we losing to Panama in the semis, and we've had some disappointing results. And then under Putsch, 4th place out of 4 in the Nations League, very disappointing. In March, very disappointing. So this Gold Cup is slowly starting to build us back up to what we've been used to in the past. So we're building back up to our average strength, is what I'm saying. There's no next level. There's no next level happening. I would like next level to happen. You know, punch above your weight, be a really fun, cohesive group that goes out there and plays their hearts out. We're still waiting on that. We've got a year. We still have a year. The time is ticking. Is next level showing up, or are we just here getting ready for us to be at average level? Time will tell. But it's good we got to the semis. I hope we have a good game against Guatemala. I hope so. And I hope that when we meet Mexico, if Mexico can get past Honduras in the final, that we frickin' give them a 2-0. I miss my 2-0. It's been a while. Last time we played a friendly, I think they beat us 2-0. We need to start beating good competition, and we need to keep beating our neighbor competition. That was the one thing Greggy B did right. We always beat Mexico under Greg, not at the beginning, but later. And under Putsch, expectations shouldn't be any different. We should be beating Mexico. They beat us a couple times already. It's our turn. All right. It's 50-50. We get a turn. They get a turn. We get a turn. It's our turn now. So, Gold Cup's going okay. Young Max Arfston and young Alex Freeman and Matty Freeze are the 3 players I think have the most spotlight on them. Patrick Agiman as well. They're a little young, a little raw. Their quality is in question. So, Matty Freeze is showing up. I think Alex Freeman had himself a pretty good game yesterday. He kicked a great penalty. Max Arfston, although player of the match, he had quite the blunder and led the and caused the penalty kick. So Max Arfston's playing his little heart out, but Max Arfston isn't winning me over. Patrick Agiman, he's really our only option right now. We're seeing a little bit of Damian Downs. I'd love to see more Damian Downs. But all our best number 9s aren't here. They're injured or just they're injured. Flo and Pepe. And, Josh Sargent's not here. Curious what he could have offered. I don't want to harp on that, but Patrick Agiman's here as a big. He's the best. He's not the best. He's great. He's not great. He's raw. He's linked to a move to Derby County in England, the championship. I wish him the best. Hope he does well there. I think Europe's always, if you're ready for Europe, do it. It's very competitive, even though it's a championship. I don't consider the championship a step above MLS. I consider them on par. But the championship is a grind, and there is the Pro Rel, and there is can you climb into the Prem? Just like how Brendan Aronson with Leeds is now going up to the Prem, And that goes to transfers. Agiman to Derby County. Matt Turner and Tanner Tessman are with Lyon. Lyon's having financial punishments right now in the 2nd division in France, being sent there, so they need to not be there next year. Malik Tillman, the rumored Bayer Leverkusen move for 35 to 40 million, I think is happening. Fab Romano announced it, so it's Fab Romano official. That's a big deal. Gio needs to find a club, maybe in Holland, maybe at PSV. We'll see. Although Ernie Stewart does run PSV, and Ernie Stewart was running U.S. Soccer during that whole Reina debacle. I don't know. I don't know if that'll have some sort of effect, a knock-on effect. We'll see. Maybe to Ajax Amsterdam he goes, which I would be all about. I just want him playing. I want Matt Turner playing top flight. I want Tanner Tessman, the top flight, playing. Yunus Musa's been linked to Nottingham Forest and Wolves. I love it. Find a club where you'll play. Tim Weah, I think, is also heading the English Premier League. As long as you'll play, These boys, they love to hang on those big clubs and compete, which I respect. But if a rotation player is what you can offer, go to a smaller club and be a week in, week out player. Sharpen your skills, and then after that, if you've got what it takes, then go to a big club again in your prime. You know, we see that all the time. The Brazilians, you look at a Romelu Lukaku. He had to go to Everton for a bit. Go to Everton. Go to a mid-table club. Josh Sargent is being linked with this. Speaking of Josh Sargent, he's being linked with the Serie A. Love it. Get out of the championship and go to the top flight. Serie A is a notoriously difficult league to be a number 9 in. The defenses in Serie A are tight, and scoring a goal is quite the achievement. It makes you feel like $1 million and really sharpens your skills as a number 9. I would love for Josh Sargent to try his hand at the top flight again. He was very young the last time he was in the top flight with the Bundesliga and with the English Premier League with Norwich. He was too young. That was too competitive. He found his footing in the championship, got out of his shell. If he's ready for the next step, then I say go for it. So we have a lot of exciting moves, Josh Sargent to Italy, Yunus Musa and Tim Weah to England. Where's Gio Reyna going? Will Matt Turner find his footing and get some regular minutes, for crying out loud? And that's the transfer roundup. So we had Club World Cup, U.S. men's national team, Nick Voltemata, the young German youngster, up and coming through Germany. Bayern's maybe future Harry Kane replacement. We'll see. It's a lot of pressure on a youngster. We'll see. And U.S. transfer talk. So there we go. This rounds out about 30 minutes. Here in my raw new live stream. We don't have the bells and whistles. I'm being experimental here. Maybe next week I'll add some more bells and whistles. Maybe the drops, maybe intros and outros. Nobody joined me on the chat, but that's okay. That's okay. I think down the line I might want to have a more interactive podcast. That was always the idea because I want this to be a fan forum for fans like us and fans like you to talk to each other about the topics because that's what we care about. We don't want to talk about our TPS reports at work. We want to talk about is Patrick Agyemang good? He's 24. Is he good? I want to talk about that. And there you have it. I saw this. The Men in Blazers has a new podcast with Clint Dempsey, the Deuce, and they have this QR code interactive function with Zoom. And I was like, that is really cool and smart. I might rip that off. So if you're listening to this and you want to talk as a fan with a forum, I want this podcast to become that forum. Always. This is a fan-run podcast for fans, by the fans, of the fans. And we're knowledgeable. I just watched some CBS Golazo, which I do love, but there were 2 guys talking on there. And I don't know what they were talking about. American sports media has people that have to speak confidently because they get paid to it. But then when they speak confidently, like this is on 24/7 sports analyst channel, and the guy is like, Costa Rica is maybe, if not as good as Panama or whatever. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Costa Rica is a much more storied national team than Panama is. So that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And that's kind of a clue to be like, does this guy really know what he's talking about? Or is he just pretending to know what he's talking about? And I think it's not here, baby. We know. We're fans like you. You're fans like us. All right. Tschüss. This has been Monday Night Abridged Flying Solo version of the Schnitzel Boys. Go MLS. Go Bundesliga. Go Summer Soccer. Happy July 4th. Next time we see you, it'll be past July 4th. Hope you have a good July 4th weekend. Now it's time for me to go watch that Man City Al Hilal game. Tschüss. Bis nächste Woche.